Dax and I have been playing music together since literally we were like kids. But yeah, we grew up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Blair had a 4-track and I had a head full of ideas, and we put them down and they were terrible. But we kept on working and kept on going, and you know, throughout the years kind of hopefully figured out what we were doing. And growing up in Louisiana was cool. It was very unique, very different, a culture like no other. But for what we were doing at the time, we just felt like we needed to be somewhere else, and we've been kind of tossing around ideas.
Atlanta at the time seemed like a great place. We're still in the South. We could still get home if we needed to get home. It fell on our faces. We knew we weren't too far away.
Go back to Mama.
We could always go back to Mom's.
2 months of being there, we formed a band, had some songs, and we're out playing shows. And then for various different reasons, Dax ended up moving to Nashville first, and then he was commuting back and forth. I started seeing the ridiculousness in it, and then I came to a point in my life where I was looking to move, and we figured we needed to have the nucleus of the band in one spot. We found Ty in Nashville. We forced Mikey to move up there.
When I first joined the band, my buddy Fausto called me up and said, hey, there's this really awesome band that's looking for a drummer, you gotta try out. I was like, dude, it's all the way out in Tennessee. He's like, well, that's cool, give it a try. So I gave it a listen, and I instantly loved the music. But I talked to Blair on the phone, and we rapped back and forth and like kind of established a relationship off of that. He was like, well, dude, if you want to try out for the band, you know, we're out here in Tennessee, just come on out. Ironically, that very next day, I got a call from this country band, and they said, hey man, we got a gig out in Nashville, you want to play it? No way, that's so weird. So I called Blair and was like, dude, just pick me up at Tootsie's. Anyways, they took me to their rehearsal studio spot, and as I was walking down the basement when we got there, I see this character at the console, and he's just got his back turned to us, and he's mixing down some tracks, and looks vaguely familiar. I go tap the dude on the shoulder, and it's somebody I went to high school with. It's actually a really good friend of mine. That was my original bass player from this other band. I was just like, what are you doing here? Okay, now it's really getting weird.
The guys were rehearsing over here, and they were having auditions, and Mikey walks down. And we had known each other 10 years ago in Texas. 10 years later, he's in Nashville, and he walks down the stairs in my basement, and I was just blown away. And I was like, that's your guy. And it was fate.
Ty's an interesting story. He came in dressed for work, dressed for success.
It's actually coming from work to the audition, so I was dressed business casual. I looked like I was trying to sell him insurance.
Really didn't say much, you know, it was just kind of like, hey man, what's up? Didn't really appear to be too overly excited about the audition.
Did my thing, and you know, they kind of asked me what my aspirations were as a musician.
What's your goals? What's your ideas? And he's like, first off, I'm not a musician.
I told him, well, I don't really consider myself a typical musician. I'm just a guy that loves music and happens to play bass.
Okay, buddy, see you later. And I went outside and
Skated off.
I skated off into the sunset.
Got on a skateboard and rode off, and thought, man, did I say something? Turns out Dax just really interpreted that as me being, I don't know, conceited or something.
But once I learned who Ty was and we straightened everything out, had our heart to heart, if you will, and it was cool. And he definitely is the guy.
Dax makes life interesting, that's for sure.
The eccentric one.
He's a songwriter. He's definitely the guy. Just he likes his thing.
Dax definitely thinks in a different way.
He's the most forgetful person on earth.
His brain operates on a different parallel.
He's the creative center.
Like seriously, he will leave his phone at the table when we stop for lunch.
He's kind of coming from another place.
Always clueless to his next move, like to whatever he's thinking in that brain of his, whatever he's going to do next.
He writes his songs, he does his part.
I think he was abducted by aliens. He talks about it a lot.
Likes to play a lot of video games.
He hates germs.
He's really good at Donkey Kong. I think he's going after the gold record right now.
I don't always get Dax, but the dynamic works because he's so much different than the rest of us.
The guy keeps me guessing, like constantly.
basically his mission in life right now is to write a gold record and to win Donkey Kong.
Early on, it was a lot of the Seattle sound, a lot of the Nirvana and things coming out of there, Soundgarden, you know, I was real into that. Our Lady Peace was a big band and influenced me a huge amount. Third Eye Blind, Jimmy Eat World, and just a lot of the later on sort of kind of punk scene, I guess, pop punk scene, the early pop punk scene, and you know, as of recently, bands, you know, like 30 Seconds to Mars and Muse, and really like what those guys are doing. Because before that, it was just all hip hop. You know, I was a hip hop guy. I loved the early '90s hip hop stuff with KRS-One or Public Enemy, and you know, Wu-Tang, and all those guys. That was kind of where I came from. And then the Seattle thing started to happen, and that's what really got me into rock music. Definitely a lot more production involved in this record. To make these songs kind of come off as I heard them in my head all along. It was a process that we had really never gone through as a rock band to make a record.
In previous bands that he and I played in, and even Mikey, we had different teams of people around us and managers and all these people that were saying, oh hey, you need to go out to LA and work with this producer, you only cost this much, you know, or you need to go to Chicago. We were sent to Nashville before we even lived there, just all over the place, you know, oh this guy's really hot, you need to work with him. And we would get there and it was, you know, finances were tight, it was such short time, you know, we're out in LA for a couple weeks trying to create a new sound, and it just didn't come off right. It just never felt like what we were hearing in our heads. So we decided that no one knew how the band should sound better than us, so we made the conscious decision to make the record in-house on our own with Tommy, who is Dax's brother-in-law, who's an awesome engineer and producer.
We'd used Tommy before for some demo ideas and some pre-production stuff, and when it came around to it, we're like, man, who knows us better than Tommy? I mean, we have a great dynamic working with him. He understands, he knows what he can get out of us already. It took us like 9 months, I guess.
Yeah, because we were all working around, you know, jobs, and you know, he had a real job and we had to get jobs, and so it definitely was a process. He actually moved into my place. My in-laws, who love me very much, went out of town I gutted their house and thought about renting gear to make the record, and I called a couple places, and the prices they quoted me for just the, you know, small amounts of gear were just
3 days.
Yeah, it was just outrageous.
Dax, being the eBay savvy guy that he is, you know, he did eBay a lot when we were on the road to make ends meet. Living in Nashville is the perfect place to buy gear. A lot of people are selling gear. Everyone has a studio around here, so basically buy the stuff on Craigslist. We got a 0 interest credit card and bought about 30-40 grand worth of stuff, and got all the gear we needed for the studio, made the record, and then when it was done, flipped it on eBay, and when all said and done, I think we made like 165 bucks.
It's cool because he actually owed me 150 bucks from this poker night we had, so.
Yeah, and owed me 15, so it worked out.
Yeah,
we're really glad you did that.
I've been trying to figure Blair out since you know, the beginning of time.
Blair is the glue that holds it all together.
Blair is the most business-minded person I've ever met, but only applied to rock and roll.
He's really been my partner in all this.
Kind of like the manager of our office, if you will.
I've never met anybody that has more dedication and passion to the pursuit of rock and roll happiness.
Always pushes the envelope.
He breathes it.
Keeps me motivated.
He sets up everything.
He does not know how to not work.
I mean, I thought I wanted it really bad, and believe me, I do.
Try and back him all the way.
This kid, he works night and day on nothing but the band.
Anytime you think you got that guy pegged, man, he will just throw you for a loop.
Everything that he does is for the greater good.
He plays a mean lead guitar, so that's why we keep him around.
He definitely has his quirks about him. There will never be another human being on this planet like Blair.
Growing up, my older brother actually played guitar, and I idolized him, and he used to lock it up in his room, and I couldn't get to it, so the thing was to pick the lock, and just because it was so forbidden, you know, I had to do it just because I was told not to do it, so tell me not to do something, I'm going to do it. I just hit one string, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I started first, you know, on the top string, figuring out melody lines, vocal lines of songs, so that's kind of where the bug came from. And then, you know, when I was young, my mom had tapes and stuff, like my first love was Chuck Berry. Had a song called My Ding-a-Ling. Loved it. And then, you know, from there, just all kind of bands. My cousins were into Kiss and Motley Crue and things like that. And then as I got older, getting into bands like Third Eye Blind, Jimmy Eat World, Foo Fighters, My Chemical Romance. But also definitely love the singer-songwriter types, like even way back from like Elton John, Billy Joel, definitely into some Bowie. I love some Pink, Katy Perry. All of our influences definitely dictate how this band is live. You know, we all take kind of the role and the style of music that we grew up on, and we each play that character in the live show, and that kind of brings out who Flight Case is. You know, 4 different individuals, but definitely come together to do one thing.
Sort of wrote this record based on, I guess, how most people come up with treatments. I came up with storylines and ideas that were really interesting and very different, but I made sure that they were still presented in a way that the listener could get out of the song whatever he or she wanted to get out of it. Left it very open. I knew what it was about. The guys in the band knew what the storylines were about. But you know, the good thing about art is it's always about whatever you see it as. That's any type of art that you go see, you should always be able to draw your own opinion from it. So I definitely wanted that aspect to be kept in the music.
I think after you listen to the song, like, forget everything you love, at first you're like, wow, I would never guess what that song was about. I'd actually rather enjoy my version better than yours.
There you go.
So I think that's the beauty of the music. Like,
It's a win-win.
It is.